Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to another episode of Who's Who, a P100 podcast production brought to you by the Muslim American Society. Who's Who is a podcast for and by young Muslim professionals. I'm your host, Abdusalam Dawood Marshall, and we've got a great show for you today. I'm super excited to welcome our next guest to today's program. She is a self-described mom, wife, life coach, and therapist in that order, and I would add inspirational speaker. Assalamu alaikum, Amina Saad, our guest today.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you so much for that.
Welcome, Sister Amina. It's wonderful to have you. As I said, I'm so excited to get to talk to you today. I've got so many questions. I'm excited to talk to you because I find that your profession as a life coach and as a therapist is so, first of all, fascinating and so vital for our community.
Yes, absolutely.
And I'm wondering, given the challenges of that field, I imagine it's more of a calling than just a job. So I really want to get into your personal pathway to this profession. I'm curious if this was a lifelong ambition or something that you discovered along the way. So let's begin with what inspired you to become a therapist and a life coach.
Let's do it. Hit the question, that deep one. So I guess you can say you hit it on the nail before. It's more of a calling, and never really something that came to me initially. It was something that found me later on. And so I always tell people, like, I didn't choose the profession. I feel like the profession chose me. It happened, I guess you can say, my senior year of high school, psychologies were what interested me then. It just piqued my interest. Majoring in psychology, I actually wanted to become an attorney. I wanted to either do business law, or you're going to laugh, I wanted to do divorce law. Go figure. Okay, I probably would have been horrible at it, putting people together instead of doing the job I needed to do. But that's kind of what ended up happening throughout college, and then just falling in love with psychology and people along the way, and the research programs that I used to join. And for some reason, it felt like, okay, like this is something I enjoy, being with people. And I think all my life since I was a kid, my mom used to always say, like, you're always arguing, you're just an arguer. And they're like, you should become a lawyer because you argue. And as I became an adult, I realized it wasn't arguing that I was doing. I was poking around because I wanted to understand. So people would take it as if I'm being argumentative. In reality, I'm not trying to argue. I'm trying just to understand. So I used to get down deeper and want to know, like, but why, not why to challenge you, but why, like, tell me, I want to understand you. And so throughout that time, becoming an adult and learning that about myself, when people used to tell me, or my mom, you just always argue. And I'm just like, but I'm not, I don't argue. And it wasn't until after graduating, I actually graduated college a year earlier than I anticipated. I had no idea. I had nothing lined up. I didn't, have any law schools lined up or any programs or anything like that. And so I just told myself, all right, I have to study for the LSATs. And I sat down at the dining room table in my parents' house, and I just started studying until something just didn't click, something didn't feel right. And I spoke with a cousin of mine back in Arizona. She herself was in the counseling field. She did social work. And I had lunch with her, and we just talked and dove in. And I said, you know what, for some reason, I feel like counseling is something I want to do. And it peaked when I had read this chick flick book when I was back in high school about a guidance counselor. And I thought that would be really cool, but it was a little bit deeper than that, the helping and whatnot. And she told me, she's like, Amina, this is one of the most rewarding jobs ever. And a quote that I love by Mother Teresa, since I can remember, was always leave a person feeling happier, let them feel happier and greater. And so I used to live by that goal, by walking away from people or a conversation in hopes that maybe I added something or inspired something or made them feel good about themselves. And so all of these little pieces, I just, put them all together. And I was like, I think this is just it. And so I decided to, throw away the LSAT books, and I just started applying to programs. And subhanAllah, that's just how my journey began.
SubhanAllah, that was your path. I mean, it's amazing.
Yes.
Just again, you clearly have that talent for probing and finding the truth in someone's problems, and it's lovely that you saw the value in trying to bring people together rather than facilitating their separation. So it's wonderful.
Again, I probably would have been the worst divorce attorney ever. I could just see it now.
So you mentioned again, this encouragement from your parents about becoming a lawyer, and we do have that kind of stereotype that in the Muslim community or the Arab American community, it's like or are you going to be a doctor or a lawyer? The choice is
Or a
yours.
judge.
The
Yeah,
whole
exactly. And my
range.
dad is like, oh yeah. And I used to tell my dad when I was a kid, I'm gonna be a judge and I'm gonna be the best judge ever. And my dad is like, yeah, Harvard Law School. I'm like, yeah, Harvard Law School. And it was never really pushed on me. Actually, it was something when me and my when I was really little, Law and Order. Me and my father used to
Mhm,
sit and watch Law and Order all the time since I was a kid,
mhm,
and it's been on forever.
yeah.
And that's just kind of where I guess the love for becoming an attorney, came from. Just my dad and I sitting there, and how proud my dad used to look in his face when
Mhm.
I said, I'm going to become an attorney and go to Harvard Law School, and he should just light up. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to do that.
So what happened when you said, you know what, I'm putting away the LSAT books and I want to pursue this pathway instead to become a therapist? What happened then? What was the reaction from your family or your community?
It's really funny because, no one, especially, culturally, like the whole talking about your problems or therapy and mental health is not really a thing. It's
Mhm,
either the family is very religious, they say turn to God and open the Quran,
mhm,
or, very cultural. In my case, my parents, and my family, they're more cultural. And it was like, physical therapist. And it's like,
mhm,
no, like you have to say in Arabic, ilm al-nafs, like the study of the
mhm,
brain. And they just couldn't kind of understand, like my grandparents couldn't understand that concept. But the one thing I had to say is I actually got more support.
mhm,
Whereas I know I've heard people, colleagues, or even now I'm getting emails from or DMs from people who say, hey, like I'm having trouble getting to this field because I'm not getting any support. I, on the other hand, actually got support
mhm,
where still my family didn't believe in therapy or
mhm,
didn't believe in going to therapy as their daughter or their niece and their or is actually becoming a therapist. And I think sometimes I know my family sometimes forgets that I am a therapist. And they're like, oh yeah, it works because you're good at it. But they would never go or they would never believe
mhm,
in it.
mhm, mhm,
So I got the support because it's like, okay, if that's something, that's our niche, then let's go for it. But the other thing too is the one thing that they saw in me is that I had that niche to put people together and to make people feel heard. And because of that reason, that talent, that's why they thought of it. Oh, that's perfect for her because that is her talent and
mhm,
she would be good at it for those that do believe in it. So I
mhm.
was sort of pretty much given more support than anything else.
Alhamdulillah. Um,
Yeah.
what would be your advice to other young Muslims who are inspired by what you do and want to follow that pathway, who might be encountering those issues? Any practical advice you would give them?
Yeah, I guess it just depends. There's two layers. There's those that are being told no, you can't, and no, and they're feeling conflicted. I feel like, when it comes to people who are struggling with that scenario,
Mhm,
excuse me, I would recommend they really sit and talk about their passion and why they're in love with it.
mhm,
And there's a video that I watched, a sheikh actually on YouTube, and he was talking about mental health. And he had said, he goes, there's illness,
mhm,
physical illness that the Quran cannot heal. And
mhm,
one of those things is a mental illness.
mhm,
And then there's the illness of the heart, which is
mhm,
what the Quran can heal. And you can fall depressed and unhappy because of life's, situations and scenarios and fall deep into it.
mhm,
That is the illness of the heart and the emotion. That
mhm,
is something that therapy, can help as well. But also turning to, God and focusing on, spiritual pathing and meditation. That definitely can be a cure for it.
mhm,
But then you have mental health, which is there's a side of it that's the sick, the illness that you can't really just cure,
mhm,
just from picking up the Quran and making
mhm,
dua, which of course you can,
mhm,
but you can't. And the
mhm,
sheikh said it perfectly. He goes, you can't tell a patient who has cancer to open up the Quran and find a cure
mhm,
there.
mhm,
It's the same scenario. And so I think being able to navigate that conversation, with your parents and family that don't believe in it.
mhm,
And then also when you can speak about why you want to become this, your passion comes out, your love comes out. It also brings that tone for them to really like, oh, I'm hearing it in a different way.
yeah.
That's in hopes you have parents who are, obviously open to hearing you. But
Mhm,
unfortunately, that's not the case with many people, that they have parents that are just, very old school, shut
mhm,
themselves off to it completely. And,
yeah,
there's no right answer to,
yeah,
be able to navigate that conversation.
right, right. Well, you've a few times alluded to this tension at times between you know your faith, which should be a source of emotional support and strength, as well as the need for professional mental health sometimes. How do you see your faith kind of informing your practice as a therapist, um, or do you ever have conflicts there?
Absolutely not. And there was that moment when I had just transitioned and left California, where I'd gotten my master's degree and where I started my practice. I had came back here for some time when I was in transition, and I had some time off because I had been engaged at that time, subhanallah, which was, this is why I think that this time in my life was so, like, I just see light whenever I think of this time in my life. And I had the time off because I was transitioning, leaving from one state to another. So I was in New York at this time because I was supposed to move to Michigan. And subhanallah, I had all this time to just dive into the Quran, and like I
Mm.
wanted to open up that book and really like understand certain things. And what inspired it was listening to a lecture by Nu'man Ali Khan, and he was
Mhm.
talking about the hijab and Surah An-Nur. And I
Mhm.
was like, huh. So I joined Bayana's,
Mhm. Mhm.
Bayana's online, whatever. And I jumped into it, and I started really studying Surah An-Nur and understanding the concepts and whatnot, and learning
Mhm.
hijab is more about the confidence that women don't just wear it. It's specifically not because men can't control their gaze. Because if
Mm.
that was the case, then the ayah of men would be after the ayah of women, right? That
Mm.
order is
Mm.
very important.
Right.
It tells men, hey, control your gaze, make sure you do that. And then, hey, by the way, women.
Mm.
So the biggest thing that inspired me to bring in Islam
Mhm.
and realize and rip away at that the psychology and bring that into a lot of my teachings and my sessions is because God already knows, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts these things in play because he already knows the mental health and what goes on, and he already predicted these things. And so he put
Mhm.
certain things in play.
Mm.
Women's specific struggle, right, is her confidence.
Mm.
And it is, psychology will tell you, women, their struggle too with reassurance, need of reassurance,
Mm.
because of our hormones, and we're just emotional that way.
Mm.
And so hijab helps with boosting. And
Mm.
again, it's not just wearing the scarf, right? It's the clothes, the voice, the way we carry ourselves. Allah
Mm.
subhanahu wa ta'ala already tells us we're beautiful and we're perfect. We don't need to
Mhm.
use ourselves to gain, what we need. Just use your voice and
Mhm.
communicate. And so when that happened, I started ripping out other
Mm.
surahs and studying other surahs. And some surahs do have what the psychology books have already been teaching us from
Mm.
years and years and stuff like that, and studies. And I'm just like, I just had that oh no, and like wow, and
Mm.
I couldn't believe it. And so that's when I just started to create groups for girl groups and groups for males. And next thing I was able to just pull different practices for people based on what Allah's already giving us, instead of using what the textbook says, and marry those two together.
What do you think the biggest misconception of couples counseling or therapy is out there?
In general,
Yeah.
yeah, I think, basically feeling like either the counselor doesn't get it, or the counselor, because they're not in our culture or not in our
Mm.
religion. That would be that. The other one is, oh, I think the counselor is going to choose, because it's going to be a woman, she's going to take the wife's side. Or if it's a male, oh, he's going to, not understand, or he's going to be too much about, the sex drive. And
Mm.
the other ones are, I think the biggest misconception too is it's just not going to work.
Mm.
But you haven't even given it a chance.
The lack of
Jump
faith.
in it.
Yeah.
Jump in it. Yeah. And it is kind of disheartening when I do hear a lot of them. I feel so bad. They hesitate because they've had bad experiences, or they've had experiences where the therapist just wasn't for them. And my one piece of advice for all of you out there that you've had bad experiences with the therapist, or you feel like you're afraid of having that lack of connection, you guys talk to your therapist, tell them how you feel in that moment, because there's a lot that can come out of therapeutic work, even for yourself, that can come out in that moment of communicating, hey, I feel like this is not working and this is why, or I feel like you're not meeting my needs and this is why.
Mm.
Because a lot of times you can be triggered in ways you don't even understand that the therapist is probably bringing out for you.
Mm.
Or maybe it is that you just don't vibe with that therapist, because that maybe that therapist's approach is not for you. And maybe you just need to understand that and try and find someone that works. So don't give up. Don't give up. Find that therapist, or communicate to your therapist what doesn't work for you. There's so much beauty in that
Mhm.
moment.
You have to give it a try. Don't give up. And as you said, just keep the communication open.
Keep the communication open. There's so much that can happen, so much that can unfold when you're open with your communication.
Um, I'll ask this sensitively because I know you have to protect the privacy of your clients and patients. But I imagine this is again a difficult profession, but also one that can be inspirational. And I'm wondering if you've had breakthroughs with people or with couples. You've turned people's lives around. If there's any memorable moments that you could share with us.
I actually do. I have one couple, and I've actually never ever spoken about this before.
Mm.
I ever felt like I think I just wanted this one for me, but no one's ever directly asked me that question. I have a couple who named their child after me, and I think it was one of the most emotional moments for me. I think in that moment, I still have times where I feel like I'm not doing what I need to do, or I'm not helpful, or am I really, useful for this individual?
Mm.
And, I still have those. And sometimes I wonder, like, why is this client still with me?
Mhm.
And I remember telling my supervisor that, and I was like, and this is a supervisor reached out to a supervisor back then. I remember calling her, and we talk every now and then. And she's like, Amina, what makes you think that, you're not useful, and what makes you think you're not being useful? And I was like, well, I don't know. Like, I don't know get why this client is still here. I feel like I'm not really doing anything.
Mm.
And she goes, but they've been with you for umpteenth years. So
Mm.
clearly you're doing something right for them.
Right.
They're not going to just sit and pay out of pocket for something. And
Right.
it kind of clicked, I think, in that moment that, taking a look at the clients that are with me, and my clients have been long term. And I think the most, I guess you can say, memorable moments for me are to know that the clients that are still with me, not the ones that we've wrapped up because I've told them, okay, you're good to go,
Mm.
but the ones that are still there, and still just want that their maintenance, or still kind of checking in. I guess it's rewarding for me, and it gives me some reassurance that, okay, like, I guess what I'm doing for them is right, because that's all I want, is I think for me, it's just more about making sure I'm doing what's right for you.
Right.
I don't do this as a profession for the money. I don't do this as a
Mhm.
profession because of whether it's a status or gain, or it's not
Mm.
about that. I genuinely want to try to flip people over, and give them what it is that I thought maybe a piece of me that I was missing, or something that I wanted as a kid and adult growing up. Like, I wanted that individual.
Right. Well, it sounds like you made such an impact on so many people's lives. Yeah.
I wouldn't know.
Well, you have a baby named after you. I mean, that's pretty good.
That is one thing I could hang my hat on, is
That
I
is
do. I
awesome.
have a baby out there named after me, which is so special.
SubhanAllah. I imagine again that it can also be emotionally draining work, and I'm wondering how you maintain your own well-being. You hear the troubles of people all day long, and how do you maintain resiliency for yourself?
Yeah, I think the first couple of years of practice, that's where I felt it the most.
Mm.
I think my first case, as a rape victim, actually, that I had, was what kind of shifted things. And it is, and you come home and you don't want to hear anyone talk. And usually I like being around people at that point. Is I've never in my life, by the way, one thing people used to know about me is, especially my supervisor will always say it, like, where are you zooming to? Like, you're always busy doing something. And my dad will tell you as well, like, she always has to be doing 10 things at once to be happy. And that is true. I don't know how to just sit and do nothing.
Mm.
It wasn't until getting into this profession
Mm.
that I used to come home for my first few years of practice. And I used to just like to lay down on the bed and just stare at a white ceiling,
Mm.
just a blank wall. And I could sit there for an hour. And I've never been able to do that. The
Wow.
old me,
Mm.
never. And, it was because I think it was just about putting pieces together,
Mm.
and knowing how to regulate, some of these things on my own, because it's overwhelming and it's a lot.
Mhm.
But eventually, I think for me, what keeps me going is the fact that there is someone out there that needs, someone to help,
Mhm.
right? And I think the rewarding piece about it is knowing that I am maybe making somewhat of an impact, in this world, to try to give that balance. And so, alhamdulillah, I'm really good. And one thing I have to say, to be honest, is I'm proud of myself, is that, I'm able to regulate, and I can actually shut the door and put everything behind me and say, all right, this is going to be here. And I know, basically set up boundaries. So what keeps me being able to do that is boundaries. And so emotional draining for me, I have to say, thankfully, hasn't happened in such a long time.
Mm.
As long as I take care of my own, mental health, right? I have my friends, my family, my support system, just enjoying life, enjoying the things I want to do, and taking some time for myself. That 10-minute shower I get,
Mhm.
that silence, and being able to take care of my physical and mental health too.
Mhm.
As long as I'm on top of that, everything is, again. But I think because of how much I love the work, I feel like I'm not as impacted as I hear a lot of my colleagues, that they are. I think you have to really love this job. You have to really love what you do. And when you can do that, it helps you with regulating, basically.
Well, on that
I feel
same
like
note,
I was too wordy there.
no, and going forward, even you mentioned, in terms of your priorities, you see yourself as a mom first, a wife, and then a therapist and life coach. Um,
Yes.
how do you maintain that balance, or do you have advice for, especially again, young Muslim professionals who might be new to marriage, or maybe new moms and also juggling a career? How do you do it, and what advice do you give to
Um, yeah, you have to be raised by my mom.
them?
I'm
That
kidding.
helps.
My mom has always been, I guess you can say, like, it, watching her do it all. I think that the mental state of mind was that it's doable, and I always tell people, if you think positive, you're going to gain positive, but it's a mindset. Like, if you tell yourself it's possible, then you can do it. But you have to check what you're able and capable, and be realistic with yourself, because then if you burn out, then you can't be a mother, a wife, a daughter, a sister, right? And so you have to be real with yourself. And so the first thing I ask everyone to do is look and see where your weaknesses are, or where, and I don't like to use the word weaknesses, but where your opportunities are. Where are your opportunities with things that you need to build, to be able to do it? And be realistic, is what do you truly want in life, and what are your priorities? And so if you can list out your priorities, then you're able to give focus and effective scheduling. I tell people, just effective planning and scheduling. And I do want to make a video on how to use planners the right way. There's a right way of using a planner that no one really knows. So check out my Instagram, you guys, soon, for my IGTV video on that one.
Awesome.
But when you can use a planner correctly, and you can schedule yourself correctly, you'll see, like, where your priorities fall and how, So I think, because my third, is the career, I ask myself, okay, what is open? What's my availability based on what I can give, how much of myself I can give, and plug those in. And if I can't do it, I just got to say, sorry, I can't do it. That's the boundary I have to put up for myself.
Yes.
I just can't do it. This does not fit in this line right here. This is for my daughter. This is for my husband. This is for my home. This is for work. And you just start plugging things in, and there you go. And you have to put yourself first in order to regulate all of that. So focus on your mental health, self-care. That is the biggest, most important thing ever. Because if you can't take care of yourself, you can't take care of anything and anyone. So put yourself, technically, you got to put yourself first in there. But the way you put yourself first, like I said, is effective planning and scheduling is so important.
Knowing those priorities first. It's not just about managing the time.
Number one, know your priorities. Exactly. Because when you know your priorities, you can set them and lay them out correctly.
Well, you've given us so much wonderful advice to think about, and I really appreciate you sharing your story. Your mother was clearly a wonderful role model to you, and you are now becoming a role model to others. So those out there who want to learn more from you, you mentioned your Instagram. Are there other ways they can follow you, get in touch with you, or learn from you?
Yes, absolutely. So you can follow me, of course, at lemons_by Amina, Amina. Or you can also go onto my website at amina.coach, and my Instagram and all of that information is there as well. And yeah, my email address and phone number, all of that is on there as well.
Amina.coach. Great. We will check it out. Sister Amina, again, we want to thank you for joining us. And I'm wondering if you would honor us with a dua as we end the show. If there's a favorite dua or go-to dua that you'd like to close us out with.
So the dua of Prophet Yunus, a very powerful one, which is La ilaha illa anta, subhanaka inni kuntu min adh-dhalimin. So there is none worthy of worship but you. Glory is to you. Surely I was amongst the wrongdoers.
I mean, thank you for sharing that beautiful dua with us.
Absolutely.
And for your inspirational stories and advice. And
thank you for having me.
we'll see you next time, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Inshallah. Alaikum assalam.